Hello everyone, and welcome back to today's video, where we continue following the deeply emotional story of the single mother lythica and the devoted police officer Hoai. The peaceful countryside where they live, once filled with the sounds of roosters crowing and children laughing, is now struggling to withstand one of the most powerful storms seen in decades. The wind howls violently, whipping against the tin roofs. Torrential rain pours down endlessly, and waves of floodwater from the mountains above surge through the fields, swirling with fury, submerging the ripened rice paddies and sweeping away small riverside houses. The once golden fields are now nothing but muddy brown water, littered with debris and fragments of broken homes. Cries for help echo across the village, children wail amid the storm's roar, creating a heartbreaking scene over what was once a land of peace. Amid the chaos, Hoai remains calm, doing everything she can to protect her elderly mother and her young child. She stacks sandbags at the door, secures anything that could be swept away, while Hoai, the dedicated police officer, braves the violent currents to rescue villagers trapped in the flood. One house after another collapses, cries for help rise from every corner, yet Hoai and his comrades press on, unfazed by the piercing rain or the mud that drags at their feet. At the entrance to the village, the floodwaters surge so fiercely that they tear away the old wooden bridge. Panic spreads among the people, but in the midst of chaos, the light of humanity still shines, neighbors helping one another, sharing raincoats, extending hands to pull each other through the rushing waters. Watching it all, Hoai's eyes fill with tears, yet deep inside, she clings to hope, the belief that as long as they stand together, they will survive this storm. This typhoon is not only a test of nature's power, but also a test of the human heart, revealing courage, compassion, and resilience like never before. Stay with us until the end of today's video to see how Hoai and Hoai faced the storm, and whether they could overcome this historic flood. Hoai and Hoai stood silently in front of the house, their eyes fixed on the stream at the edge of the village, where the floodwater was still rushing down. The rain had stopped, but the ground was soaked, and misty steam rose from the wet earth. The water flowed swiftly, carrying along bamboo branches, logs, twigs, and clumps of yellow straw washed away from the submerged fields. The sound of the water striking the bank was loud and heavy, threatening. Neither of them dared to look away from the edge, fearing that at any moment, the flood might surge over and sweep away everything they had struggled to protect. Hoai held a flashlight, his voice hoarse from exhaustion but still steady. Pack everything important and move it to the attic. I'll check the chicken coop and the duck pen. Before he could say more, Hoai nodded quickly, rolling up her pants and wading through the freezing water. She hurriedly gathered clothes, sacks of rice, blankets, and the pot still boiling on the stove, moving them all to higher ground. Outside, Hoai dashed through the drizzle, the sound of water slapping against his boots echoing in the night. He untied the ropes, herded the ducks into the corner of the coop, and lifted each shivering chicken to a safer spot. The wind roared, blowing cold mist into their faces. Sweat and rain mixed, running down their cheeks. Each time Hoai glanced toward the fields, she saw the water rising just a little more. Her chest tightened, her fingers gripped the doorframe. The rain had stopped, but the flood kept churning endlessly. What if it rises again, she thought, her heart pounding wildly. Hoai returned, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. His voice was low but firm. Stay calm. I think the water won't rise any higher. Just hold on a bit longer, we'll be fine. His eyes were steady, like an anchor in a sea of chaos. Hoai looked at him, her eyes glistening with tears, and nodded gently. She knew that as long as Hoai was there, she wouldn't be alone. That night, Hoai didn't rest. He and several villagers took turns reinforcing the dirt embankment, blocking leaks at the corner of the yard. Shovels struck the muddy ground with dull thuds, mingling with the sound of heavy breathing. Under the faint beam of flashlights, faces were drawn and weary, but no one stopped. They knew, if the embankment broke, everything would be lost to the flood. Hoai boiled a pot of water and brought it out for everyone to wash their hands, quickly making hot ginger tea. Her hands trembled as she poured, partly from the cold, partly from worry. Each time Hung came back, she only dared to watch him from a distance, his clothes soaked through, his shirt clinging to his body, yet his eyes still shone bright and steadfast, like a lantern in the storm. At dawn, as the first weak sunlight crept over the bamboo grove, the water began to recede, little by little. The yard was covered in mud, wet straw plastered against the walls, but the flood had finally gone down. Hoai's small wooden house still stood firm, quietly resting amid the muddy wreckage. She stepped out onto the porch, her bare feet still caked in mud, eyes glistening as she looked up at the pale morning sky. Softly, she whispered, "Thank God, we're still safe." Standing behind her, Hung smiled gently and brushed a drop from her cheek, unsure whether it was rain or tears. They looked at each other in silence. The birds began to sing again after the storm, and the wind carried the earthy scent of a countryside reborn. They both understood, though they had lost much, as long as they still had each other and this home, they still had everything. Beneath the gray sky after the storm, love and kindness, those small but enduring lights, continued to quietly warm the wounded land, bringing hope back to their village after the days of chaos. As the floodwater began to recede, the sun slowly emerged through the mist, its dim light filtering over the damp fields. The scent of wet earth filled the air. Across the village, people started to come out of their homes, stepping carefully through the thick layer of mud, picking up whatever could still be saved after the storm. Hoai stood on the porch, watching the glimmering puddles left in the yard, her heart heavy. She knew that out there, her old house, the rice fields, and the vegetable garden she had tended with care, were likely all destroyed. "I want to go check on the old house," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the muddy road ahead. "Maybe see if there's anything left of the garden." Hung looked at her, silent for a moment, then nodded. He understood the turmoil in her heart. "All right," he said gently. "Go, but be careful. The path's still slippery." He tightened the strap of his backpack and glanced toward the distant mountain ridge. "I'll go check on your foster mother," he added. "The rain was heavy up there last night, it's prone to landslides. I'm worried she might not be managing on her own." Hoai's expression changed to worry. "Let me go with you." Hung shook his head. "No need. Take care of the house first. I'll stop by Uncle Ba's place and ask him to send some help. I'll be back by noon." And so, they parted ways, she heading toward the muddy fields, and he along the slippery trail up the mountain. The path Hoai took was thick with sludge, each step sinking to her ankles. The stench of floodwater hung in the air, mixed with rotting straw, branches, and debris. When she reached her old house, she stopped dead. Half the tin roof was gone, one wall had collapsed, and the furniture had drifted far into the fields. The vegetable garden, once lush with greens, gourds, and bitter melon, was now nothing but a wasteland, thick with mud. She knelt down, her trembling hands touching the flattened plants, tears falling and mixing with the muck. "All that effort, gone," she whispered. Then, glancing at the patch of land where a few banana trees still stood firm, she forced a small smile. "Well, as long as there's land, there's still hope." Meanwhile, Hung was making his way up the slick mountain trail. The road was uneven, with fresh marks of landslides scarred into the hillside. Every step had to be careful. As he neared the small wooden house of Mother Hoai's foster mother, he called out loudly, "Back Hoai. It's me, Hung." There was no answer. His chest tightened, and he rushed up the steps. The door was ajar, the inside was dark. Pushing it open, he found Mother Ha sitting curled by the fire, wrapped in a thick blanket. Seeing him, her face lit up with relief. Heavens, Hung. I thought I was cut off completely. He hurried to check around the house. Thankfully, though the walls were damp, the structure still held. He gently helped her up and pointed toward the slope below. You're lucky, BAC. Another few meters and the hill would have given way. Please come stay with us for a few days, it's safer. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. Yes, as long as we're still alive, everything else can be rebuilt. By late afternoon, Hung guided Mother Ha down the mountain. On the road back, they met Hoai, returning from the fields with a small bundle of salvaged vegetables in her arms. Their eyes met, both covered in mud and exhaustion, yet what shone within them was relief. They both understood that after all this loss, the most precious thing left wasn't crops or possessions, but the safety of those they loved. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in their hearts. And in days like these, family, love, and faith, those quiet flames, shone brighter than ever, lighting the path toward life once more. When Hung guided Hoai's foster mother back home, the fading afternoon light bathed the muddy village road in a soft golden hue. On both sides of the narrow path, thick layers of mud clung to the ground, puddles of water shimmered faintly, reflecting the dim sky slowly clearing after the storm. The air carried the blended sense of smoke, damp straw, and rain-soaked earth, that familiar fragrance of the countryside after a disaster, bittersweet yet comforting. Hoai was just returning from the fields. Her steps were heavy, her old torn conical hat tucked under one arm, clothes streaked with mud, hair wet and clinging to her neck with sweat and mist. In her hands, she held a small bundle of crushed vegetables, the last fragile remnant of what was once a lush garden. When she looked up and saw Hung helping her foster mother down the steps, a surge of emotion filled her heart. Mother! Oh my God, are you all right? She cried, rushing forward, her trembling hands clutching the elderly woman's cold, wrinkled fingers. Mother Ha smiled gently, her voice weak but kind. I'm fine, child. Thank heavens I'm safe. Hung came just in time, the ground behind the house collapsed last night. I thought I wouldn't make it. Hearing that, Hoai froze, her vision blurring with tears. She held her mother's hands tighter, overwhelmed with relief and sorrow. I was so worried. I thought something might happen up on the hill. Thank you, Hung. If it weren't for you, her voice broke off, choked with emotion. Hung shook his head and smiled softly. Don't say that. She was lucky, I just did what I could. His voice was calm and warm, though his eyes still carried traces of worry. After a quiet moment, Hoai began to tell them about her morning trip, her voice filled with sadness. I went to the old house, it's gone. The flood took everything, the roof's gone, the walls have collapsed. Inside, nothing's left but broken wood. The vegetable garden, the cornfield, the sugarcane patch, all buried under mud. I couldn't hold back my tears. All that effort, gone in an instant. Thankfully, we moved to higher ground in time, otherwise. Her voice trailed off, her eyes shimmering as she looked into the distance. Hung stepped closer, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It's all right, he said softly. What's lost can be rebuilt. As long as we're alive, as long as we're together, that's what matters. Mother Ha nodded, her tone steady and wise. That's right, child. I've lived through so many storms. We lose everything, and then we build it all again. This land is strong, and so are we. As long as there's kindness and helping hands, everything will fall back into place. Hearing those words, Hoai nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, yet a faint smile appeared on her lips. She looked at Hung and her mother, her voice trembling but warm. "I just want everyone to be safe. We can lose everything else, as long as we still have each other, that's enough." Hung looked at the two women, one gentle and wise, the other strong and determined, both of whom he cherished deeply. In that moment, all the fatigue and fear from the storm seemed to fade away. He spoke quietly, yet firmly. "Starting tomorrow, I'll help you rebuild. We'll fix the house together, start over from the beginning." Hoai looked up at him, her eyes red but shining. She nodded and took his hand tightly. Mother Ha watched them silently, her eyes misty but her heart at peace. The three stood together in the muddy yard as the evening breeze brushed past. The rain had stopped completely, and a faint light began to spread across the sky. Far away, a few small birds returned, chirping on the bamboo trees by the gate. Though the world around them lay in ruins, a deep sense of peace was slowly returning to their hearts. Amid the devastation, they still had one another. Amid the loss, they found renewed faith. And amid the remnants of the storm, these three souls, Hoai, Hung, and Mother Ha, realized that the most precious things in life are not what can be kept, but the people who still stand beside you after everything has passed. Rain still drizzled outside the porch, fine, misty drops falling steadily on the mud-stained tin roof, making that familiar yet melancholy sound of a village after the storm. The sky above remained a dull gray, the clouds still heavy and slow to fade. In the distance, the river ran thick and brown, carrying the long branches, banana leaves, and golden straw, drifting lazily downstream. Far away, faint voices, a dog's bark, the first small signs of life returning. Inside the small wooden house at the edge of the village, a dim yellow lamplight flickered softly, casting a fragile but warm glow. Smoke rose from the kitchen, blending with the scent of freshly cooked rice, grilled dried fish, and warm ginger. Hung crouched by the fire, the breeze from outside making the flame waver, now blue, now red, sometimes dimming, then flaring up again. He carefully adjusted the pot of rice bubbling over the fire, the gentle gurgling sound like a lullaby after so many days of roaring wind and rain. Mother Ha sat nearby, a faded scarf wrapped around her shoulders, her hands deftly sorting through a few remaining morning glory stems salvaged from the back garden. She washed them and wrapped them neatly in banana leaves. Beside her, Hoai spread a mat, setting out a simple meal, bowls of white rice, a plate of golden grilled fish, and some boiled vegetables with chili fish sauce. Everything was modest, yet in that quiet moment, every dish, every movement carried a deep sense of gratitude that they were still alive, still together. The little house seemed to grow warmer amid the cold rain. The flickering firelight revealed every wrinkle, every trace of fatigue left on their faces after the storm. No one spoke for a while, they simply sat in silence, listening to the crackling fire, the soft patter of rain, and the gentle whistling wind along the eaves, the rare peace they had longed for through the chaos. After a moment, Hoai spoke softly, her voice low but full of emotion. "I just hope the rain stops soon, so everyone can rebuild their homes and gardens. We've all lost so much." Her words hung in the air, still and heavy. Hung looked up at her, his gaze calm and deep. He knew that beneath her words lay not only her own worries, but the sorrow she carried for the whole village, for those who had lost everything yet still managed to smile, to endure. He said quietly, his voice hoarse but steady, "The sun will come out again, I promise. We can rebuild it all. This land may be buried in mud now, but it will turn green again." Hoai looked at him, her lips trembling into a faint smile, her eyes glistening with tears. She didn't reply, just nodded, as if to say she believed him. Mother Ha placed her frail hand on her daughter's shoulder and smiled kindly. "Don't worry, child. We've been through hardship before. Once the storm passes, we build again. As long as we're alive, nothing is truly lost." Her words echoed softly in the small wooden room, simple, but strong, like the heartbeat of the land itself. Hung ladled rice into bowls, Hoai set down the fish sauce, and Mother Ha refilled the lamp with oil. The light grew a little brighter, reflecting off their mud-stained faces, faces filled with quiet strength and faith. The three sat together, lifting warm bowls of rice, sharing pieces of grilled fish and boiled vegetables. It wasn't a grand meal, but each bite tasted of life, gratitude, and love. Outside, the rain still fell, but it was lighter now, a cleansing rain, washing away the last wounds of the storm. A soft breeze drifted through the doorway, carrying the scent of wet soil, kitchen smoke, and wildflowers blooming somewhere along the distant dike. From the bamboo grove by the gate came the gentle chirping of night birds, a peaceful sound, signaling that calm had finally returned. Hung looked outside and said quietly, "Tomorrow, I'll go with the villagers to rebuild the bridge and repair the school roof. You stay home with Mother, tidy up the yard, all right?" Hoai smiled and nodded. "Yes. Just as long as it doesn't rain again." Mother Ha looked at the two of them, her heart swelling with silent gratitude, gratitude that even among ruins, people still cared for one another so deeply. "The storm will pass," she whispered, "but its losses, and the kindness it brought out, will stay." Though the floodwaters had receded and the mud still clung to the roads, though the fields lay bare and broken, a small flame of faith was beginning to burn again in every heart. Hoai, Hung, and Mother Ha understood that what they had endured was more than a natural disaster, it was a lesson in compassion and human connection. Having preserved their own small home, they began helping their neighbors, clearing debris, rebuilding roofs, and mending broken roads. Hung and the village youth hauled planks of wood to build a temporary bridge for the children's path to school. Hoai and Mother Ha gathered food, dividing what little rice and salt they had to share with those still in need. Amid the ruins rose laughter and voices of encouragement. "Hold on, once the season passes, the sun will shine again." The mud could cover their homes, but it could never bury their spirit. The image of Hoai in her conical hat, shovel in hand, Hung carrying planks of wood, and Mother Ha bringing baskets of hot rice to those repairing their houses, all stood as living proof of one simple truth. No storm can wash away humanity. And their journey continues, a journey of kindness, resilience, and life reborn in the countryside after the storm. Stay tuned for the next episode, where Hoai, Hung, and Mother Ha continue helping their neighbors overcome hardship, rebuilding from the ruins a season of peace, where hope once again takes root in the land reborn.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình đang edit dở video về câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân lythuca và cảnh sát Hùng á mọi người. Hiện tại thì mình vẫn đang làm chưa xong, như mọi người cũng biết thì hiện nay ở chỗ khu vực của Hoai đang sinh sống là ở phía bắc của nước Việt Nam thì đang bị ảnh hưởng bởi bão rất là nhiều. Không thì chồng làm một nửa thôi chồng. Chồng ơi, có nhiều quá không? Nếu mà nhiều quá thì làm một nửa thôi. Hiện tại thì chỗ ở ngoài Bắc thì bị rất là mưa bão, còn ở chỗ mình thì mình ở trong Nam, nên là mình không có bị ảnh hưởng nhiều và mình vẫn đang có thể làm video cho mọi người. Ở miền Bắc thì có nhiều nơi nó ảnh hưởng đến độ mất điện, không có điện để xài nữa, và mình vẫn mong rằng mọi người đều được an toàn và chúc cho mọi người có thể bình an vượt qua cơn bão này. Tạm biệt mọi người.